Coming at you from the campus of Bethel College in Mishawaka, Indiana, this is Bethel Pilot Radio.
Quentin Tarantino of Django Unchained and Christopher Nolan, most recently of Batman, both still use film, both swear by film. Les Miserables, Lincoln, Silver Linings Playbook, Beasts of the Southern Wild, just to name a few of the Oscar nominees, were all shot on film. Argo, Amour, Life of Pi, and Zero Dark 30, on the other side of the debate, were all shot digitally. So I wanted to bring in an expert in this area, and his name is Griffin Hammond, and he is a video producer at YouTube Next Lab, a team that helps YouTubers attract audiences and create better videos. Griffin's own YouTube channel called Indy Mogul has over 500,000 subscribers and features do-it-yourself techniques for low-budget filmmakers. Thanks for coming on today, Griffin.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me, John.
Hey, no problem. I really appreciate it. So for somebody who may be listening to the show right now and saying, I saw Les Mis, I saw The Avengers. Of course, The Avengers shot digitally, Les Mis shot on film. I didn't notice the big difference. What is this debate all about? What's the fuss all about? Could you just talk for a couple minutes about the crux of the debate?
Sure. Well, it's funny. You're right. You probably won't see a difference as an audience, especially because in the end, these films are usually projected digitally, even if they're shot on film. A lot of theaters aren't showing them on a film strip anymore, so they eventually get converted to a digital format. But one of the reasons that film is still so popular, like you said, 5 of the 9 Best Picture nominees were still shot on film, is because film, believe it or not, is still higher resolution than we can get through digital means. I mean, there really aren't pixels on film. It captures more detail than we can get on a digital camera. And even though we may not need all of that when we're projecting the film, filmmakers still like that extra material to work with. It makes some of the editing a little bit easier to do. But I think the biggest part of it is that a lot of these filmmakers like Spielberg behind Lincoln, or Tom Hooper behind Les Mis, even Quentin Tarantino behind Django, these guys have been making movies for such a long time, and they've been doing it a certain way on film. And I know many of them have tried digital, but this is just what they're used to. So it's kind of like, well, why change the workflow if it works? So I think that's probably the biggest part, is just they're used to these cameras and using the film, and it works for them, so why change?
And some directors say that it is more, it's a different, just a little bit different look that you get from film. It adds a different dimension, and I heard somebody say digital is a little more realistic, while film is more of the film human look that we've been used to for such a while. Is there, I guess, like you mentioned, the end product, the person sitting there may not be that big of a difference, but is there any merit to that argument that you get a different look from film, more of a filmy look like we've been used to for the last 100 years or however long they've been using film, compared to the new digital format that's more realistic?
Yeah, I think you're definitely right, and I think the filmmakers that are using film would argue that it just gives them a different look. And I think there's always this debate, whether it's film or other techniques, about, do we want things to look realistic or do we want them to look like movies? And this was a big debate with The Hobbit, because he shot it in, Peter Jackson's film was in 3D, and it was 48 frames per second, which is double the frames every second, which makes it look more realistic. But a lot of people don't like that look. A lot of people want to go to the movies and recognize that it's surreal, and it just has a different look than reality. So you could argue that, yeah, we should stick with 24, stick with film, stick with all these things that don't make it look like real life.
And what is the cost difference? I'm assuming that film is probably much more expensive just because you're working with a physical film, a physical medium, opposed to digital that you can erase and write over, whatever. What's the cost difference if you can translate it? The people, when they're looking at both of these, they say, okay, this one's going to be X more expensive.
Right. Well, I don't know the exact cost because fortunately I work in digital, but yeah, especially with film stocks becoming less used, they're becoming more expensive to get. And then you also have all these extra workflow steps that you have to do, because essentially what they're doing is they shoot on film and then they scan the film so that it is digital, and they do all the editing digitally. But then when they're done editing, the computer can say, okay, now that we know what you want to do digitally, let's go back to the original film and chop it up and reprint it on film. So there's just a lot of extra steps working with film, but Hollywood has gotten so used to that for so many years that there's still plenty of people who can do that. I think the people that are using digital, you're seeing a lot more digital in television, and especially on YouTube. I mean, my world is mostly people shooting in digital, just because if it's going to be delivered in a smaller resolution on a smaller screen anyway, it's even less likely that you'll notice the difference.
I want to read a quote here from Wally Feister, who is an Oscar-winning cinematographer, and he says, "I'm not going to trade my oil paints for a set of crayons," comparing film to digital. "I will be one of the last guys shooting film, and Chris Nolan will be one of the last directors shooting film, but I am certain we'll be using digital technology within the next 10 years. So basically saying, this is what I prefer. I'd rather work with film, but digital is the future. How long is it before we see everybody switching over to digital, or will there be, for at least the next foreseeable future, will we still have directors using film?
I think many directors will probably use film as long as they can get their hands on it until they're dead. I mean, you could see a director like Spielberg, why change now? He'll probably just use it as long as he can. You have younger directors like Catherine Bigelow, who directed Zero Dark 30 and The Hurt Locker before that, and she shot Zero Dark 30 in digital, and that makes sense. She's younger. So I think people that are coming to the game now and they see pretty good digital technology, that they may adopt it. But right now, digital is still, you hear about cameras that shoot 4K, and that's a resolution size, and that's about the maximum that most theater projectors project right now. So it kind of makes sense, you don't really need to shoot bigger than they're going to show it in the theater. But it still kind of pales in comparison to the resolution of film, but it's always growing, that size. So I think, several years from now, it'll be even higher resolution, and there'll be less of an argument for continuing to use film. But I think you just kind of have to wait for younger filmmakers to come along and pick up the new technology, and wait for the older filmmakers to kind of disappear and stop making films.
As we see the digital formats become, like you mentioned, 4K, and the higher resolutions, digital is getting, as technology advances, of course, it's getting better, and the cameras are getting cheaper. The Red series of cameras comes to mind, which have been used in Hollywood, but also some independent guys who don't have the huge bucks have also been using them. Are we seeing independent films become better and better able to compete with the guys who have hundreds of millions of dollars in Hollywood? Because as we see technology get better, these cameras, like I said, are getting cheaper, and the quality is similar to what the Hollywood people are using. But are we seeing independent films that didn't have the opportunity before, now with better technology? Are they better able to compete with the big guys in Hollywood?
I think definitely so. I feel like this is a great time to be an independent filmmaker, or really, even if you're not a filmmaker, just anyone shooting video that you want it to look high quality, because there's so many great camera options on the market for almost any price range. A lot of people right now are shooting with DSLRs that can cost anywhere from $500 to a few thousand. There's plenty of good cameras in the 10,000 range. It just, however much money, whatever your budget is for film, you can get a pretty good looking video camera. I think the biggest difference between Hollywood and independent filmmakers right now isn't the camera so much as the big budgets that you can spend on, actors and special effects teams and distribution and publicizing the films. But as far as cameras go, that gap is definitely closing, and you can get your hands on a nice camera.
We're talking to Griffin Hammond of the Indy Mogul YouTube channel here on BethelPilotRadio.com, the Ticker Show. One last question for you, Griffin. I really appreciate you coming on. If you could choose either platform, assuming that there was no cost difference, you had just film and everything needed to use it, and a digital format, and somebody said, okay, I want you to make a movie, which one would you choose, assuming there was no price difference and you had film versus digital?
Well, I think I probably go for digital for the same reason that directors like Quentin Tarantino and Spielberg go for film, just because that's what I'm used to and it works for me. I'm not about to jump into film right now because I know that there's a lot of, I know the cost is different, that there's a lot more workflow, and that's just something I wouldn't be comfortable having to deal with all those extra steps. For me, it's so much easier to point the camera, shoot something, and it's already in the format that my computer is ready to work with. And that's also the format I'll be exporting in, is a digital format for people to watch. So for me, it's a no-brainer, but I understand why film is still so popular.
That makes sense to me. Well, again, I really appreciate you coming on, Griffin Hammond. Where's the best place that people can stay up to date with all that you're doing, Griffin?
Well, if they go to indymogul.com, they will land right on our YouTube channel. We have over 1,000 videos, so many years of videos now, where you can learn how to create Hollywood effects on a low budget. Currently, we do a lot of tutorials for amateur filmmakers and DIY low budget filmmakers. So yeah, check it out if you're interested.
Yeah, so very good videos over there. I highly suggest anybody who's interested in this type of thing, check out Griffin's channel. I've been watching it now for a while, and it is very, very educational and entertaining material over there. So again, thank you, Griffin. Really appreciated it. It was a great discussion, and thanks for coming on. Everybody, check out his channel.